In June 2011, Levi Belfield, a former bouncer from West London, was in court charged with committing one of Britain's most high-profile murders.
From a high-security prison back to the Old Bailey, convicted killer Levi Belfield goes on trial for the murder of Surrey schoolgirl Millie Dowler more than 9 years ago.
Millie Dowler was last seen around Walton-on-Thames station on the 21st of March 2002. Her disappearance sparked a police investigation on a national scale. Today, that disappearance was described as every parent's worst nightmare.
Levi Belfield was a domestic abuser, he was a woman murderer, he was a child molester, and he was a child killer.
He's just the most violent, unreasonable, unpredictable, dangerous person I ever came across.
The 50-year-old's killing spree was only stopped because his former partner, Joanna Collins, found the courage to speak out against him.
You are pleased that you've been part of stopping him and giving the families closure, but then on the other hand, you still feel that terrible amount of guilt that if you had said something quicker, he might potentially not have killed as many or ruined as many's lives.
Levi Belfield was convicted of 3 murders and 1 attempted murder. He's one of a handful of prisoners who will never be released.
I have absolutely no doubt whatsoever that if he hadn't been caught, apprehended and incarcerated, that he would have continued in his crimes.
When people hear about a murder, their automatic response is to have sympathy and empathy for the victim, and actually the families of the victim. But there are a whole other set of victims, those who are related to the killer. For them, just as the victims' families' lives have changed irreparably, so too have theirs. And it's often an area that we forget to explore.
He will always be a part of my life, partly because I've got kids with him and partly because of what happened.
Levi Belfield dominated Joanna Collins' life for more than a decade, first as her partner and father to her children.
He could charm the birds out of the trees. You know, he could really speak well, talk to you about good wines, help anyone out. If you've broken down, he'd go and get in his car and go and help you. When he needs to be, he can actually be the most caring, loving person you'd ever want to find.
But their relationship was tempestuous, and Joe was subjected to regular violent abuse.
I don't like it when people call him an animal. So I find that very unfair on animals, because animals don't behave like it. Animals kill to survive, they don't kill for pleasure, and they don't rape, and they don't abuse. So to call him an animal is unfair. A monster, yeah, or a rogue, that's okay, but not an animal.
Joanna Collins is one of the most feisty and courageous women I think I've ever met. And the fact that somebody with a personality as big as hers could be downtrodden and abused speaks volumes for the real nature of Levi Belfield.
I wasn't frightened of him, I was terrified of him. And that's 2 different things. When you knew he was coming, you didn't know what mood he was in, how he was going to be. He'd either be perfect or a psycho.
Despite years of abuse, Joanna proved to be instrumental in putting him away for good for one of Britain's most infamous murders. Colin Sutton was the Detective Chief Inspector in the Met Police who first made the link between Millie Dowler and Belfield.
Millie Dowler was abducted from Station Avenue in Walton-on-Thames on the 21st of March 2002. She was on her way home from school. She'd gone beyond her normal stop where she got off, one stop on the train, to go to the cafe at Walton Station with her friends from school. And she was last seen near the bus stop on the other side of Station Avenue, just close to an alley that goes through into the flats which are Collingwood Place, where Belfield was living at the time.
The first time I heard about Millie Dowler's disappearance was in the press and on the news.
From the day the search began, the people of Walton, whether they knew the teenager or not, never gave up on Millie Dowler. From her parents, a plea from the heart.
We're devastated. We're just so desperately worried, and we just want to have Millie back home with us so much.
When you first see it, you think, please, not another kid, you know, because it's a child, isn't it? And being a parent, even if you're not a parent, you don't want someone else's kid to be missing.
The crime itself appeared completely nonsensical. There was no motive, no relationship. Nobody knew for such a long time what had happened. We kind of got to know her through the recordings on the phone, through the pictures that her parents posted, and you felt that you had a relationship with her. And knowing that Belfield was able to kill her just goes against the grain of what we expect from human beings.
Her body was eventually found on the 18th of September 2002 in Hampshire, a road that goes into the woods. There were some people out to go and pick mushrooms, and they found Millie's body. There were no forensic clues really from her body, not even any reliable certainty as to how she died. The place where Millie's body had been dumped, where Belfield dumped her, was somewhere where he was used to going with his old girlfriend, Joanna Collings.
Joanna Collings had first brought Belfield to the police's attention in 2004, following an appeal for information after the brutal murder of a 22-year-old woman. She told officers that he was a violent man who had a hatred of blonde women.
There was a magazine, like a Cosmopolitan Vogue kind of magazine, and he'd stabbed and slashed all the pictures of the blondes. No others, no dark hairs, no blacks, no brunettes, just the blondes. Every girlfriend and everyone he's killed have all been blonde.
When Belfield became a suspect for this murder, Colin Sutton discovered information that also connected him to Millie's death. Surrey police then got in touch with Joe.
The police had questioned him about Yateley, and he said he'd never been to the area. Bizarrely enough, I'd got rid of every photo that I had of him, burnt the lot, bar 2 photographs, and I don't know why, but I kept them in an envelope. They were of me and Levi at Yateley Horse Show. And the police had said to me, can we go to the showground so they could see where the picture was taken and the location. And as we were driving down the dual carriageway, on the left, there's like a lot of land, like a common. I said, yeah, we used to take the dogs coursing over here. And they sort of like, you know, slammed the brakes on, and they looked at each other, looked at me, and they were like, but you never mentioned that before. I said, well, you didn't ask. You've only asked about Yateley Horse Show. So they said to me, can you take us exactly where you used to go? So I did. And while we were walking along, they sort of, every now and then, like, look at each other, and they sort of, are you sure you know where you're going? And I was like, yeah, because we used to come up here. And it turns out that where I actually took them and where we finally stopped is right near where they found Millie's body.
Joe's evidence proved Belfield knew the area of Yateley well, but he still denied killing Millie.
Why haven't you sat there instead, jumped up and down and shouted from the rooftops, you've got the wrong person?
No comment.
Then are you an innocent man?
No comment.
Because if you are, tell us.
No comment.
And give us that explanation for where you were and what you were doing.
No comment.
Are you able to do that, Leroy?
No comment.
Belfield was charged with the murder and faced trial, but pleaded innocent.
The way he conducted himself during trial at the Old Bailey was appalling. To the judge, yes ma'am, no ma'am, sir, to the barristers. But as soon as the jury were out, as soon as the judge was out, he would be kicking off, he'd be yelling at his legal team, mouthing obscenities. He just behaved in a completely different way.
Dr. Julian Boone is a forensic psychologist who understands killers like Belfield.
My guess is that at that time, school kids were turning out all at the same time, and that looking for a girl and feeling possibly angry, he found it necessary to pick on poor Millie, who happened to be walking beside a bus at the time. Perfect cover between that and the hedge. I think that it is a deep-seated urge to go for female victims, and where the opportunity presented, he would pounce. And has absolutely no remorse.
For Joanna, her evidence to police meant that she would finally have to tell her children the truth about their father.
I'd managed to keep everything quiet and keep away from them. It was when I was at the Old Bailey over the Millie Dowler trial that I had to tell them, because obviously it was on the telly and everything. To tell my kids that their dad was a murderer, no, I didn't find it hard, because we're very close. He'd never hurt his own kids. Other people's kids, but he'd never hurt his own kids.
In June 2011, Levi Belfield was on trial for the murder of schoolgirl Millie Dowler.
Levi Belfield was an individual that could have attacked anyone at any time. He was motivated by the way he felt and took out his wrath on anyone who was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
His former partner Joanna Collings was forced to tell her kids about their father's violent past.
I didn't sit them down and have a chat with them. We were out, I think we were out on the yard doing the horses, and we were just discussing things. And a few times they'd sort of said about their dad and, oh, you know, where is he? And I'd always said, oh, he's not a very nice person, he's not around. The conversation went along the lines of that I'd be on the telly because of what had happened and that he had potentially killed someone, but what they had to remember was, for all his faults, he was a good person, which is true.
Joanna first met Levi when she was 18.
I used to keep my horses round the corner from where his mum used to live. He had quite a nasty reputation for sorting out trouble or causing trouble. Levi loved a fight.
It wasn't until Joanna was in her early 20s that she first started dating Levi.
To start off with, he didn't appeal to me at all. He wasn't my sort. I'd long lost my dad, and when you're in quite a bad place, he always comes across as the big softie. I was crying one night and, you know, he came over and he was like, oh, you know, what's wrong? And I was sort of saying, oh, my dad's not long been, you know, died. He kept asking me out for a drink and oh, no, no, no. And then you kind of give in. Well, we went for a meal on the first date and he turned up with flowers and it was lovely. It was really nice. And he literally moved in from that night.
We know that when Jo started dating Belfield, she'd recently lost her father, and when you are in the throes of grief, you are looking for somebody to look after you. So it makes perfect sense that this guy who was equated with being a bit of a bad lad but powerful, that he was somebody that she'd feel protected by. She'd have been easy to manipulate. The fact that they move in with each other into her mother's house after the first date demonstrates just how vulnerable she was, because that's not making a positive choice.
And it was not long before Levi started to show Joanna his true nature.
It was all right to start off with. It was perfect, really. And then you sort of started seeing the change coming. The first time he hit me, it was more of just a slap than anything else, and then he got really upset, and, you know, because he told me, and I believed him, that I was the love of his life and he'd never felt this way about anyone, and, you know, he was just so sorry and he didn't know what had come over him.
Levi Belfield was one of those domestic abusers that essentially reacted with violence and then suggested regret. And what that does to a victim is it confuses them.
you actually do genuinely think, did I do something wrong? Am I in the wrong? And before you know it, you are actually controlled by him. The way he would control you would be, you couldn't have your own car. You did, but he used to use it all the time, and phone calls he always had to answer or listen in. Post, he even opened my mum's post one day and she went absolutely ballistic. Bathroom, you didn't go to the bathroom on your own. You had to leave the door open or he would come in with you. It started off with a few slaps and a bit of verbal abuse, and then it progressed to the punching, the kicking, the rapes, the strangling, burnt cigarettes, whatever he chose to do. I wanted to leave, well, I wanted him to leave quite a few times, but once he's there, like I said, he controls you and he rules everything and he doesn't leave.
There can seem to be no doubt that Belfield looks upon women as things to be controlled. His pattern, according to police reports and according to the victims who lived to tell the tale, was to be totally charming at the outset, seemingly the perfect gentleman, but the rapidity with which it descended into complete control and fear would appear to have been so fast that that is totally in connection with the sadistic personality. They do not have a sense of uncertainty and a powerlessness because they've got power and certainty over somebody else.
To start off with, you don't fight it, but you do question it. But he's so clever that before you know it, you're so involved and in so deep that it just becomes everyday way of life. You don't actually think, well, this isn't quite right. You do believe him because 9 times out of 10, he wasn't the person that he turned out to be. He was a really nice person. And it is really sad that if you could take the nice person away from the rogue, you'd have probably almost perfect boyfriend material.
Jo does what so many people do in domestically abusive relationships. She looks at the good points. So instead of saying, I am living with a dangerous, aggressive, violent man, she says, I am living with a loving man who occasionally is violent. That is why people stay in domestically abusive relationships, because they believe the best in that person, even though they've seen the worst of them.
Just underneath this wing now, I had a dolphin tattoo with Levi's name on it. It was almost like a classic brand of his, that everyone had Levi's name tattooed on them.
The fact that Belfield had several women have tattoos of his name just demonstrates his desire to own them. It's about possessions, it's about branding them. So this indelible mark of his being present in their life, that was important to him, because much like he would like to own a dog, he liked to own his girlfriends.
Jo felt powerless to do anything about this abusive relationship.
I've spoken to Jo many times, and she felt for a while, could she have done anything to stop it? The problem is, when you've got somebody who is a completely controlling, violent, all-powerful, self-centred person like he is, it's very, very difficult to do anything about it. He's just the most violent, unreasonable, unpredictable, dangerous person I ever came across.
When Joanna gave birth to their daughter in February 1996, their relationship changed.
After I had my daughter, yeah, he was very abusive. That's when it really escalated. Just the beatings and the rapes just became more intense and more frequent. It was everyday life. When you live that day, every day, it's like Groundhog Day. It's just a constant circle.
But when it came to his children, Belfield showed his softer side.
For what he's done, he's a very good father. You can't fault him with the kids. He would help change nappies, he'd feed. Very proud of the kids. You know, they were always dressed in really nice clothes. You know, as a dad, yeah, he was very good.
Joe manages to separate who Belfield is as a human being and a man from who he is as a father. He was a terrible human being, but he was a great dad. Now, it's completely contradictory, but you can understand that she wants to keep something of him positive because her children belong to him as well. But to the outside world, it's not true. He was a horrible man, he was a terrible father, and he was a killer.
There is a phenomena in psychopathy. That is compartmentalization. And you can have a situation whereby one of the most brutal, uncaring, lacking in remorse individuals, you can have all that. But when it comes to their own children, oh ho ho, it's oh so different, because that's part of them. They are to be protected and looked after. But they don't give a fig for anybody else.
Levi's aggressive behaviour continued towards Joanna, but in 1997, she left him.
I think the final straw was when I was pregnant with his son, our son. He came round and he'd wanted to buy a fan, and I said no. So he kicked off on the doorstep and gave me a really good hiding. I mean, he kicked the shit out of me. Remembering I was pregnant, and it was like a switch had been flicked, and from that day, that night, I stopped being scared from him.
Often, when a partner threatens the potential of a child or harms the child that's here, they will remove themselves from the relationship because they see that the violence isn't just simply directed at them. They could be a threat to their child, born or unborn, and often that means that they leave the relationship. That's the breaking point.
I wasn't scared of him. He didn't control me anymore. He couldn't dictate what I could and couldn't do, and he didn't like it. But the relationship became really bizarre because when, like a bully that he is, when a bully loses their power, it's a whole different story.
Joanna Collings had broken off her relationship with Levi Belfield in 1997 after he assaulted her while she was pregnant with their son. But he then began to stalk her.
He kept ringing the house phone constantly. Just be on the phone long enough to hear where you were or what you were doing. Drive past all the time. And we had God knows how many pizzas delivered, taxis, other takeaways. I did get an injunction, yes. I was the only one that ever did. The injunction was pointless because he ripped it up and put it through my letterbox anyway half an hour later.
When you hear Jo talk about the fact that Belfield stalked her, she talks about it quite flippantly. Now, if you've been heavily controlled for a very long period and you've got used to being micromanaged, when somebody continues to do that from a distance, it's normal for you. And that makes me come to the conclusion that she has adjusted her reality to make herself feel that those horrendous events were not quite as horrendous. It's a way of coping.
Despite Levi's constant presence, Joanna was determined to keep her children away from him and his family.
They didn't need to be involved in that situation. They're my children. We're the lioness, they're the cubs, and you protect them.
In 2004, facts about the real Levi Belfield started to emerge when he became the prime suspect in a series of violent attacks and murders. Detective Chief Inspector Colin Sutton led the team investigating.
On the 4th of February 2003, Marcia McDonald went to the cinema in Kingston with her friends. She left at about midnight, and she got a bus to go back to Hampton. This was the bus stop where Marcia McDonald got off after her journey from Kingston. On the CCTV, we see her in the doorway of the bus just getting ready to get off. And then through the windows of the bus, we can see Belfield's car in the crossroads there, and it stops, and it's waiting to see which way she goes. She turned right, the car followed her, being driven by Levi Belfield. Just a few minutes later, Marcia is found outside a house, only yards from her home. She's got a terrible injury to the back of her head from which she never recovered.
At that time, police had no lead to identify Belfield, and he struck again just over a year later.
Kate Sheedy was the head girl at a Catholic girls' school in Twickenham. On the 28th of May 2004, Kate got a bus and she went home to her home in Isleworth. And when she walked from the bus stop after alighting, she saw this vehicle parked up in front of her. She said it was like a people carrier, and she described it as sinister. And so what she did was she crossed the road. And as she did that, she heard the vehicle pull off at speed, and it knocked her down, and the front wheel of the vehicle went over her, and it stopped while she's on the ground between its wheels, and then it reversed. And she had terrible crush injuries to her ribs, to her spleen, to her liver, to her spine. She somehow retrieved her mobile phone and crawled towards it and managed to dial 999.
He ran over me. He ran over you again? Yeah. He ran over you twice? Yeah. And I'm really hurt.
It's a common myth that murderers continually use identical methodology. So I'm not at all surprised that there are differences in terms of the mode of attack, be it a hammer, be it strangulation, be it rape and torture.
Incredibly, Kate Sheedy survived the attack, but another young woman, Amélie Delagrange, was not so lucky.
Amélie Delagrange was attacked in the evening of the 19th of August in 2004. Amélie was 22 years old. She'd grown up in a idyllic, quiet village in Picardy called Anvoil. Her father was an architect, her mother was a PA, and she got a job in a patisserie in Richmond and a room in a house in Twickenham, near Twickenham Green. This is about where she was attacked, where we're standing now. And she was aiming for that road over there, where her flat was just a couple of streets away. So she made it to within 200 yards of her house before she was attacked. Amélie had been hit on the back of the head. The severity of the blow, the force that was used, there's no doubt that this was somebody who knew what he was doing. He was trying to kill her.
This afternoon, police said they wanted to trace a car seen on the night of Amélie's murder.
It was the news of Amélie's violent death which had persuaded Joe to first speak to the police.
When he killed Amélie Delagrange on Twickenham Green, I did go into the incident room. I think it was a couple of days after. I just knew in myself that it was something to do with him.
She said that my ex-partner is a man called Levi Belfield. He works as a bouncer, as a wheel clamper. He's very violent. He's misogynistic. He's violent towards women particularly, and he knows this area very well. And he drives a little white van. And of course that was the key, because she said he drives a little white van and we were looking for one.
In November 2004, following Joanna's tip-off, police were able to arrest Belfield for the murder of Amélie.
He was arrested at his home address in Little Benty in West Drayton. naked, hiding under the fiberglass insulation in his loft. Levi told us, he said, you know, oh, I thought you were other gangsters or criminals coming from. I didn't realise you were the police, sir. I'd have not gotten hidden if I'd have known it was the police. You know, he was always trying to charm and explain things away.
It soon became clear to Colin and his team that this latest murder was similar to other attacks they were investigating.
The telling thing about it, perhaps, is that we continued to do the crime pattern analysis for before and after his arrest. And these blitz attacks, single blow, back of the head to women, were pretty rare. Nationally, were almost confined to southwest London. But they stopped. There's no doubt that these other attacks, maybe a couple of dozen similar attacks, some of them outside of London, but where he was at the time, where he was working or where he'd travelled to, are down to Levi. You know, he's responsible for virtually every one of these attacks that has happened in the last 20 years.
The regularity, the frequency of these crimes shows that the urge, the needs are endemic. It doesn't require a particular trigger. What it requires is an opportunity that he can act swiftly.
Despite knowing how violent Levi could be, Joanna felt very conflicted when Belfield was finally arrested.
The day he got arrested, it was really bizarre because it was like I said, it's almost like you've always had that safety net. And the day he got arrested, it's like, wow, I'm actually really vulnerable now because he's not going to be about. And it's really weird. He's controlled for so long and ruled your life for so long, but then suddenly he's not there and you feel really vulnerable and like open to anything. Oh, that's my kid's dad. You know, you don't want it to be.
When Levi Belfield was arrested for murder in 2004, his ex-partner Joanna Collins' life was turned upside down.
When Levi was first arrested, my son did say, could you go and visit him? I said to him, at the end of the day, it's your dad. If you want to go, I'll back you all the way, but don't be disappointed and don't expect anything special. And about a week later, he came up to me and he's like, do you know, I don't want anything to do with it. So, I mean, if they wanted to, it would be completely their choice, but they've got no desire to have anything to do with any of the family.
In February 2008, Belfield was found guilty of the murders of Marsha McDonnell and Amélie Delagrange, as well as the attempted murder of Kate Sheedy.
I did follow the first trial through the press, but I knew what was going on anyway because the police had, I said they were really good. They literally kept you informed on everything. You know, every day you spoke to them and every day they let you know what was happening and what was going on.
In March 2010, the police had enough evidence to charge Belfield with the murder of Millie Dowler. In 2011, Belfield was on trial again. This time, Joe was called to give evidence in court.
When we went to the Old Bailey, it was really daunting. The police said, oh, you know, there's quite a few press outside. There was like hundreds of them, and they're all shouting and taking pictures and all the flashes.
The British press were not the only people closely watching Jo give her evidence.
Levi's mum, sister and brother were there. I used to be very close to one of his sisters, and it's a shame because she is a really lovely lady and her girls are really lovely. His mum was just a female version of him. It's really bizarre how close Levi and his mum was. You know, you get that feeling, and it's no matter what he did, he was never ever in the wrong, and he could never do anything wrong in his mum's eyes.
Belfield and some of his family still say that we, the police, the criminal justice system, fitted him up, in their words, that you know, that there was something crooked or wrong about the evidence. The evidence stacked up. It all fitted together. But we know that the kind of aura, the personality of Levi Bellfield was such that it could kind of intoxicate others in some ways. Maybe that's what happens with his family. Maybe, you know, they just cannot see him for what he is.
It is strange that he was so respectful to his mother, but so totally non-respectful to many other stranger women. But if you have family, then very quickly the rules of psychopathy change. It really is not so much blood is thicker than water, but blood is important, water not at all.
Despite the pressure, Joanna faced her ex, Levi Bellfield, in court.
I refused to scream. His barrister and our barrister were side by side, and he was sort of, you could see him in the middle, behind, and you're trying to talk to them without actually looking at him. And then you think, do you know what, I've got nothing to hide. I don't need to hide from him, because what I've said is true. Even though he will tell everybody that I'm a liar, and his family will say I'm a liar, and everything I've made up. You sort of make eye contact. For a split second, you sort of think, do you know, no, you're not going to do it anymore, because you are guilty and you need to be found guilty, which thank God he was.
He was, of course, sentenced to whole life tariff for Millie's abduction and murder, and whole life tariffs for the 2 murders and the attempted murder.
With this verdict, I can finally move on with my life and attempt to put this behind me. Of course, I will never be able to forget what happened to me. The scars on my body and the memories I have are something I will never be rid of, but hopefully I can move on.
It was an incredible day, the day that he was convicted and then sentenced. I don't know how to explain how I felt. It was very difficult to speak to anybody afterwards. I think everybody was so emotional. There was an awful lot of hugging went on, but not all that much talk. You know, people were just so relieved that we'd succeeded. There were 8 or 9 different victims of Levi Bellfield, some of whom's offences weren't even charged, that came along to see him sentenced, because we kind of told them that even if we can't get the evidence to charge him with your offence, your justice is her justice is your justice. And you know, the important thing is that he's locked away forever and he can't harm anyone else in the future. I believe he's the only person to get a whole life tariff sentence on 2 different trials. It's absolutely right he should never be released, just because he's such a danger.
He is one of the only few prisoners in this country that will never come out. It does give me a lot of confidence, because it means I'm safe, because I know if he got out, he would have come for me.
What makes Levi Bellfield terrifying is that he has little reasoning behind his crime, apart from wanting to create pain in his victims. You know, he has no motive or relationship. They've not done anything to him. They're completely innocent human beings.
In January 2016, Levi Bellfield would claim that he'd raped and strangled Millie to death before dumping her body.
Bellfield's confession to what he did to the teenager after snatching her from near this station in Surrey has brought the Dowler family no comfort at all.
He would retract this confession a few weeks later.
One thing we know about offenders who have sadistic characteristics is that they can offend vicariously. That is to say, you can be sadistic on a one-on-one basis, but you can also torture via their families and their friends. And it gets to the very heart of what those poor parents and family had to put up with.
After the court cases were over, Joanna had to tell her kids that their father was a serial killer.
My kids are amazing, absolutely brilliant, and they have no problem. It's not right, no, they don't have, I wouldn't say they don't have a problem with Levi being their dad, but because in their minds they haven't got one. My son came in one day a little while ago and he said, "Oh, I see Daddy on the telly." And I sort of looked at him, I said, "Are you all right, boy?" And he went, "He's not my father, is he?" So, you know, it's not making a joke of him, but they're in that stage in their life that they can actually look at him and think, "Do you know what, you're not a dad, you're not a father."
One of the key principles that Jo utilised in her mothering of her children was openness and honesty. She never hid his presence, they always knew who he was. I think it's really, really important psychologically for children to be completely aware if their father is this kind of human being, because they're not in for any shocks.
But others are quick to judge Joanna for her past relationship with Levi.
I get trolled all the time, but only unless you actually live the life and you know what's happening. They're only keyboard warriors. And you do get a little bit upset when you read it online, how people say you're as guilty as him, you're as vile as he is. But do you know what? I don't know you. You have no impact on my life. So if you choose to sit behind a keyboard and bang out some horrible words, crack on. I have lost some friends over him, yeah, over Levi, but they clearly weren't proper friends. One, she said that obviously I enjoyed everything that I'd gone through with him because I hadn't kicked him out, because I hadn't walked off. And other people, I wouldn't say they thought I was as guilty as him, but some people they just can't sort of process what's happened. People get the wrong end of the stick all the time about me. I think they think you're going to be this dribbly mess that sits there shaking in the corner and sort of doesn't really want to discuss things. I mean, it's hard.
The catharsis of sharing your story is something that's very helpful. And the more that you do that, the more you're able to put the pieces of your life back together. Essentially, by sharing her story, she's also giving leverage to other people who may be in those positions. She's reminding you that actually that man who's abusing you has potential to kill. And that's important because
people say you come across as this really, strong person. But that's when you're with other people. When you're on your own, you don't have to be strong. But only the strong survive. I'm not a victim, I am a survivor. So if I can be strong after what I've been through, other people can. And I'm testament that you can actually come out the other side.
In December 1998, Surjit Athwal, a young mother of 2 from West London, had not spoken to her family for weeks. She had disappeared.
This is the area of Punjab where Surjit was last seen. She came here to attend a wedding with her mother-in-law. That seemed a strange thing to her own family because before she left, she talked about starting divorce proceedings against her husband. Now her own family fear the worst, that Surjit has become the victim of an honour killing.
Killing someone in the name of honour is a badge that's worn by some communities to say, look how strong we are, look how strong-willed we are. We don't care if it's our own, but we will kill for our principles and our honour and our shame.
Elderly Punjabi lady in white, Bachchan Kaur Athwal, a grandmother of 16 children, was said to have been the one to hatch the plan, calling a family meeting to discuss the killing.
Surjit was married to Sukhdev Athwal. The woman accused of her murder was Bachchan Kaur Athwal, her mother-in-law. Another of Bachchan's daughters-in-law was Sarbjeet, who was married to her youngest son. On returning from India, Bachchan told her of Surjit's fate.
She told me that Surjit was drugged, strangled and her body was thrown in the river. And when I heard those words, I was shocked. I just went sick. My stomach just felt sick and I just wanted to collapse.
Imagine knowing that someone that you care for deeply has come to grave harm. But actually that harm has been carried out by people that you're meant to trust. by people that you actually live with.
For years, Surjit's husband and mother-in-law would get away with her murder.
Bhakan just went, I'm going to get rid of her. That's what she thought of her as a human being and a life and a mother of her grandchildren. Awful.
Sarbjeet and Surjit both married into the Athwal family when they were teenagers. Their parents forced them to marry husbands they barely knew, and the girls moved in with their new in-laws as soon as the ceremonies were completed. Little did they know that Surjit's attempts to leave her unhappy relationship would lead to murder.
Her final attempts to break out of the marriage through a divorce cost her her life.
Jagdish is Surjit's brother. Surjit was working with him to organise a divorce from her husband. It was this that led to her death.
Athwal's perception of her breaking out of their grip was so profound and so compelling for them that it caused them to plan, orchestrate and actually carry out almost a perfect murder 5,000 miles away.
The Athwal family were devout Sikhs. The family matriarch, Bachchan Kaur Athwal, could not tolerate the shame created by Surjit's plans to divorce her son, Sukhdev.
Bhakan is an individual who wants the whole community to believe that her family is a good family, that her family is the most religious family. The minute that her daughter-in-law says, I want a divorce, that's the final straw. Because now she knows that she has no leverage, no power, no control.
Bachchan was determined to protect her family from the shame of divorce.
Bachchan had a family meeting. I was asked to sit in the meeting. Sukhdev was there. She said that Surjit's behaviour was getting out of control and she had to put a stop to this. She had spoken to her brother in India who said that if you can bring Surjit over to India, we can take care of everything.
Sarbjeet was not aware that taking care of everything meant murder.
They will do what it takes to uphold that honour of that family. And for Surjit to be killed, she wasn't seen as a victim. She was seen as a thorn on the Athwal side. And they couldn't obviously kill her in this country. It was easier to take her abroad.
So Bachchan made plans to dispose of her daughter-in-law Surjit for good.
She said that she was going to take her to India and get rid of her. So when I heard these words, for me, I'm just thinking that she's talking out of anger. She's upset. What is she gonna do? That's her daughter-in-law. It's Sukhdev's wife. She can't do nothing. She's just talking out of anger.
Sarbjeet was at that meeting. There's a really important reasoning why Bachchan would have had her there, and it's simply because she's then complicit. Because if she hears what's happening and then the murder occurs, the assumption of Bachchan is she's in on it, she's one of us.
Bachchan's plan began with a trip to India, where she and Surjit would attend a family wedding in Punjab together.
Leading up to her trip to India, we didn't hardly speak to each other because mother-in-law kept us apart.
I was due to meet her the weekend before, so we worked out the exact detail of her divorce. And when I phoned her, she told me, no, don't come this weekend. I'm getting ready to go to Punjab. I was absolutely staggered, and I said to her, I remember, why are you going with the enemy number one in your life? I remember using those words. Why are you going? I can't understand. Her chaotic words were, no, you don't understand. I just need to do this one thing, and when we get back, everything will be good and we'll get on with the divorce. Clearly, she was pushed and pressured into something.
Mother-in-law actually said to her that, just come to India with me, there's a family wedding out there, show yourself, be the daughter-in-law you can be.
You do me this one last thing, show your face, play the jolly, happy daughter-in-law, present this image of good and happiness, and then when you get back, I'll give you your divorce. It was all clearly a trap. It was all clearly a pre-prepared trap. So the rest of the family all around her, the husband, the brother-in-law, the sister-in-law, the sisters, the mother-in-law herself, all know, you, Surjit, you'll be dead in a few weeks. Unbeknown to Surjit, she was about to board a flight on the 4th of December. She was never going to come back.
Sarbjeet, now realising Bachchan's plan to get rid of Surjit was real, did what she could to stop it.
On the day they left, I called Crime Stoppers to tell them what was going on. I then wrote a letter to my local police station telling them what was going to happen before it happened, so hoping they could put a stop to this. Nothing was done. When Surjit went to India, I spoke to my sister and said to her that Bachchan's taken Surjit to India and said that she was going to get rid of her. And my sister, 2 days later, had gone to the police and reported exactly what I said to her. And again, the police didn't do anything about that.
Sarbjeet knew that something sinister was going to happen to her sister-in-law. She was privy to those conversations, and imagine how terrified she must have been knowing that that was the capability of her mother-in-law, husband and brother-in-law. In spite of that, she wrote to the police. That is heroic. It might seem small, but when you consider what she was up against, her own potential murder, it was incredibly brave.
Jagdish had no idea of Bachchan's plan, but was becoming increasingly concerned for his sister Surjit's safety.
I said it to Surjit on the phone, when you land, you must call me. I remember speaking to her husband, desperately saying to him, give us a number as to where they are staying. His snap response, oh, there is no number in the village where they're staying in Gurdaspur. They don't have a phone number. Well, then get Surjit to phone me. Yeah, I'll get the message sent across. And I asked him, how are you communicating with them? How are you communicating with Surjit and your mother whilst they're there?
Surjit and her mother-in-law Bachchan left the UK on the 4th of December 1998. And upon arrival in Punjab, things seemed to be going to plan. And Bachchan had no problem staying in touch with the family back in the UK.
They attended 2 weddings out there. Sukhdev would phone India to speak to Bachchan, and he was getting updates on a daily basis of what's going on.
On the 18th of December 1998, having attended the weddings, Surjit and Bachchan were due to arrive home.
Mother-in-law came back. She was saying that everything's going to be okay now. Nobody's going to talk about our shame in the family. When she finally told me exactly what happened, then I couldn't believe what I heard. She told me that Surjit was drugged, strangled, and her body was thrown into the river. When I heard those words, I was shocked. I just went sick. My stomach just felt sick, and I just wanted to collapse because I couldn't understand. At first I was thinking, is it true? Because I still couldn't believe that somebody could do that. It's a family member, she's left 2 kids behind, she's your daughter-in-law. You couldn't have done that. That's when it began to sink in. Actually, this is what you've done.
To know that your sister-in-law has been murdered, to know that your family are responsible for that murder, and to know that they have got away with it, you have nowhere to go. What's your way out? You can't talk to your own family about it. You're afraid they'll be ashamed of you. You can't talk to the police about it. They'll ignore you. You can't talk to your husband about it because he might murder you. I mean, what a position to be in.
In December 1998, Surjit Athwal, a young mother of 2, had been brutally killed at the orders of her husband and mother-in-law while on a family holiday to India. But what caused this religious, upstanding family to take such drastic action? Surjit and her brother Jagdish were raised in Coventry.
My parents had 5 children, 5 of us, and Surjit was the 3rd one in the middle. We were a typically fun, positive Punjabi family, born, bred and growing up in an English environment.
Surjit's parents were quite liberal, but still had wanted to keep up traditions with their children.
Dad, despite all his caring and loving for us all, did have a certain approach to life. He was ever keen to get us all married as soon as possible. And I think that was a cultural streak that he had carried with him from his parents and previous background culture. And I think his innocent but misguided rush to get us all married, all well intended, but seriously misguided, it led to Surjit getting married at a young age, 16.
The man chosen as her husband was Sukhdev Athwal.
I remember the very day I went with Dad and Uncle, and we went on behalf of the family, as the men in the family, to go and fix up Surjit in Hayes, West London, to the Athwal family. It was a half-an-hour visit, and in half an hour, we had tragically made a decision for Surjit that would cost her life.
As a Sikh woman, and as a woman who's born and brought up here in the UK, I believe that Surjit was married at such a young age of 16 because she was very attractive, and the fear of the family, especially the father, may have been that she may attract other men. Her father thought she doesn't want to catch the attention of anyone else that may bring dishonour to the community.
Surjit's future sister-in-law, Sarbjit, was raised in a more conservative household.
From a young age, my parents always taught us that what honour and shame meant in our family, and not to rebel, so we didn't dare to step out of line. I was 18 when my parents sat me down and said that maybe it's time for you to get married.
The man chosen for Sarbjit was the Athwal's youngest son.
This Athwal family, my grandparents knew them because they were both from Singapore before they came to the UK.
For both women, the first time they met the Athwals was at a formal meeting to agree their marriages.
The mother-in-law saw me, and my father-in-law seemed a really, really nice person. But there was this something strong inside me was telling me that something's not right. If I carried on saying no, I had to think about the shame I would bring to my parents as well as the community members. So I really didn't have a choice, and I said yes.
I think it's really difficult for people who are westernised to understand the power of being part of a particular community. The idea of rejecting a said partner feels impossible, because if you're rejecting that person, you're essentially rejecting your family's choices, and that's disrespectful and disobedient.
16-year-old Surjit also had little choice in getting married. On the 6th of June 1988, she became the newest member of the Athwal family.
Her wedding ceremony took place in this very Gurdwara. And most of these Punjabi weddings back then in the 80s are largely not very full of love and excitement and romanticism.
It was, however, an emotional day for Surjit.
I do remember early in the day at home, Surjit was crying. She was expressing anxiety, nerves, but she was told by everyone, this is your day and you get on with it.
When does arranged marriage become a forced marriage? It becomes at any given time when someone says, actually, I found out something very concerning about this individual and I don't want to marry him.
After Surjit married Sukhdev Athwal, a year later, she attended another wedding, Sarbjit's.
The preparations for the wedding in our culture goes on for about a good week or so. I don't think I was happy that day. I was unhappy. I was nervous. And if I was honest, I didn't want to be there. I was standing in my dad's lounge and he gets me up and he goes, it's time to go. I was crying that day, and I was really didn't want to leave that house basically, because really, really unhappy. It was meant to be the happiest day of your life when you get married. But I think I wasn't happy.
Sarbjeet moved into the Athwal family home in Hayes, but her in-laws were nothing like the happy religious family they presented to the world. The two sisters-in-law, however, bonded over their common experience.
Sergi was really, really nice. We got on quite well. And then sometime later, then she would tell me about how she became a daughter-in-law in that house, how people weren't treating her better or nicely, and sometimes speak about the mother-in-law, Bachchan Kaur, that watch out for her.
It was clear to both Sarbjeet and Surjit from early on that although their father-in-law was head of the household, his wife Bachchan Kaur was the one who really had control over the family.
As days went by, my mother-in-law, I started to see her true colours. So if she was with me in presence of other people, she was all nice and pleasant. And it was just me and her, it was a bit cold. And I couldn't really connect with her.
Surjit was just 16 when she moved into the family home, and in secret documented her experiences. These diaries would prove to be damning evidence against the Athwals.
Since being married to my husband, I just found it very impossible to compromise with him. Every time I tried talking to him, he would disagree and involve his mother in our marriage. I was never to leave the house without his and his mother's permission. I just grew to hate my husband and couldn't stand to be in the same room as him and his mother.
Everyone reading those diaries had a lump in their throat, because this was a young girl who was just wanted happiness. She'd been attacked. There was allegations of sexual assault in there. The treatment was just barbaric, and it was recorded in her diary.
Surjit's role, as with many other daughter-in-laws, was to stay quiet, do the household chores, earn money, and do as she was told, and not have an opinion. Surjit was always seen as an outsider, simply because she wasn't an Athwal by blood.
Bachchan had 4 daughters of her own, and we could clearly see the difference. She was mainly like, my daughters are more important, and they were allowed to do anything they wanted to do, but as daughter-in-laws, we had to go by her.
One of the things that's remarkable about Bachchan's power is that she's this quite small older lady. Essentially, she doesn't have any physical power, really. The power that she has is psychological. She controls her boys, and she controls the way that they can treat their wives. That's an intense and immense amount of control.
In 1990, 6 months after Sarbjeet moved into the family home, Bachchan's husband, Gyan Singh, passed away. This changed the family dynamic significantly.
In our culture, the head of the family would have been my brother-in-law, Sukhdev. Being the eldest son in the family, he would have taken that role, but my mother-in-law announced that she was going to be the head of the family. She became more strict, and I realised that things had to be her way, for me and Surjit.
The impacts of Bachchan losing her husband may well have meant that she felt that there was a potential that she would lose some power, that people wouldn't necessarily listen to her. But it's unusual that she would become the patriarch to some degree, the one who has the major control, and also the one who's most violent. That's something innate within her. She's cruel, she's controlling, she's nasty, she's disrespectful, and she's dangerous.
For 5 years, we were just frozen in thinking that everything was good because she never spoke for 5 years. Would visit periodically, but she would never murmur anything was going wrong. And then suddenly, all abruptly, she just exploded 5 years into the marriage.
In January 1994, Surjit fled the Athwal home.
She came to Coventry. She said, I'm fed up. Why is she fed up? Verbal abuse. You're an inadequate daughter-in-law. you're not properly conforming to the Atwell family code or the family manners.
Couldn't do anything that was going to upset her. Nothing that would cause dishonour to the family. Always made sure how we dressed, how we behaved, and how we spoke out there in the community, that she was happy with that.
But Batchan's friends started to notice that Surjit wasn't living with her husband's family.
You would get community members asking about Surjit. Batchan, they would say, "Where's your oldest daughter-in-law? We haven't seen her for a while." So to keep honour going in the family, she would speak to Surjit and say, "Come back."
In the spring of 1994, Surjit started a new job and agreed to move back to the Athwell family home under certain conditions.
So she said the only possible way that this marriage could possibly survive is if you and me, the husband, and our children, we move away and have our own place. And he grudgingly agreed to that. Mother-in-law grudgingly agreed to that. Where do they end up buying their house? Literally next door.
And Surjit's mother-in-law, Batchan, was determined to punish her for the dishonour her new job and long absence had caused.
When she got a job, she started going out making friends, socialising with people at work, and Sukhdev wasn't happy about that. Batchan wasn't happy about that at all.
Her financial income was taken off her. Her finances were controlled by the mother-in-law.
Sometimes Sukhdev would follow her to work to find out exactly where she had gone. Then he would come back and report to Batchan, and she would get angry. I could hear from the walls next door that Batchan would scream and shout at her. Then Sukhdev would hit her, and I could hear screams coming from Surjit. They were always complaining about her behaviour, that she wasn't listening, she wasn't being the daughter-in-law they wanted her to be, and she was getting out of control, and they had to put a stop to this.
Surjit was about to commit the ultimate betrayal of family honour, as she recorded in her diary.
I would like a divorce, as I know I can't live with him because of his violence and his mother running his life for him.
She had already instructed a solicitor in West London to start divorce proceedings. She was serious, as the Atwell mother-in-law told me very vividly months before Surjit's murder. She will get her divorce over my dead body. You better tell your sister to get into line.
In December 1998, Batchan Athwal had admitted to her daughter-in-law Sarbjeet that she and her son Sukhdev had organised the murder of his wife in India. The Athwals believed they'd gotten away with the perfect murder.
My mother-in-law standing within the community was very powerful. Everybody looked up to her. She was religious, she prayed day and night. What she did with Surjit, I didn't expect that from her at all. I didn't know she was willing to go that far. They carried on living like nothing had gone wrong. I got up every morning thinking that something's got to be done. I can't carry on living my life knowing that something has happened to Surjit. And I did everything I could. I still tried speaking to the police where I could. I had to think about my own safety and my children's safety at the same time, and Surjit's 2 kids.
Surjit's children were suddenly left without a mother in the same house as those responsible for her death.
The son was really, really young. He was 8 months when Surjit went to India. But the daughter was about 8, 9, and they fed us so many stories saying that your mum's not actually going to come back. We've spoken to her, she's gone, she's left you, she doesn't love you. And from that day onwards, she actually believed and grew up thinking that my mum's not going to come back. There's something wrong with me. She's left me. And imagine that being told to a young kid.
They brushstroked Surjit Athwal from history. There was nothing in the house. Her kids would have not known anything about their mum. One day she was there, one day she weren't. I think her children suffered greatly because of that.
Not everyone in the family, however, was going to accept the Athwal story of Surjit's disappearance.
To all historical cases, there's somebody there saying, I ain't having it. And that was Mr. Singh, Jagdish Singh Dhillon.
When Surjit did not arrive back to the UK with her mother-in-law sitting next to her on that British Airways flight on the 18th of December 1998, In our minds, my whole world went topsy-turvy. Where is my sister? Why isn't she on that flight? What has happened to her? We were not going to let our sister, our daughter, just die and disappear into this unknown death and be forgotten about. We contacted the local police station in Coventry, who were unresponsive, turned me away at the front desk that this is not a matter for the British police. Overseas death doesn't concern us. Metropolitan Police did not come back to us, and yet we were all desperate. Somebody's dead. All the signs are they've been murdered by a family who's now sitting in the UK, all comfortable and cosy, that they've carried out this murder, and there seems to be no sense of police urgency on this. I said, get them all, interview them rigorously, somebody's going to speak up. We were hoping that Sarabjit, the other sister-in-law, would spill the beans.
Finally, in 2000, the police arrested the Athwals.
Bachchan Kaur was arrested, Sukhdev was arrested. I was arrested. They put me in a cell for 10 hours. They interviewed us one by one. When they interviewed me, I told them, gave them information, said that I had rang Crime Stoppers the day before she left. I wrote a letter to the police before she left, telling them this is what's been said at the meeting by my mother-in-law, by Bachchan Kaur, and this is what's going to happen. They couldn't find the letter. They kept saying that, no, you haven't. You're just trying to get out of the situation. You're just trying to cover your back. My husband kept saying, she's not feeling too well. She keeps making these things up. She's been in hospital. She's been to see the doctor. Then I had police officers sitting in front of me. These are senior police officers sitting in front of me and saying to me that we think you have mental health issues. We think you're making it up. You're not feeling right. You need to see a doctor. You need help. That's when I realised that they weren't prepared to listen to me. And I was on my own. When Sukhdev came out, then Bachchan came out, they all asked my husband to find out what she said to the police, because it can only be her and nobody else is going to speak against us. It can just be her. And again, they didn't have enough evidence to go any further. That case was closed as well.
Bachchan was so manipulative, so clever, and also so able to see how things could play out that she managed to convince the police officers that her daughter-in-law was unstable and that what she said had little meaning because of her mental health conditions. The police listened to Bachchan. Imagine knowing that you were telling the truth, knowing that you tried to speak to the police about that, and then actually being questioned by the police, telling them what had happened, and being told you were a liar. There is nowhere to go. You cannot ever get heard. That's terrifying.
I think people forget that I did speak up before it happened. There's loads of people out there who actually think you didn't save Sergey, you could have saved her, you had every chance to save her, but I couldn't. There's a lot of fear there, thinking that if I spoke to anybody, they're going to do the same thing to me. The fear was still there, thinking if they find out, what will happen to me? And then Sergey would never get justice, the kids would never get justice. So there's a lot of pressure all the time.
Sarabjit is not the murderer, by no means is she. And I don't want my words to be misconstrued like that. She is a victim as well, absolutely she is. But one powerful lesson that comes out of these kind of concealed, internalised, in-house murders, honour murders, is the need for us all to have that little portion of bravery to speak out. Because if we didn't speak out, murders would go on all around us and we'd just sit on them. And that's the tragedy. So I commend Sarabjit for finally speaking out. But yes, I'm hurt that it took her 5-6 agonising years to do that, when in fact the case could have been snapped up literally within weeks had she spoken out at the beginning.
It would be years before Jagdish and his family would be able to convince the police that Surjit had been murdered.
Sukhdev Bachchan are constantly talking about Jagdish, why he's campaigning. He should know that his sister's just gone off with somebody. He needs to stop what he's doing. He's given us a bad name. All that was going on in the household. But for me, I was actually pleased that somebody was out there doing all this, because I couldn't do it all on my own. I needed somebody out there. So that for me it was really, really good, and I wanted to give him as much support as I could. But again, there's no communication between us. I wasn't able to speak to him. He couldn't speak to me.
I spotted Sarabjit in the Southall Gurdwara. I went up to the car, she was driving, knocked on the window. She didn't bring it down, she just stared ahead, she stared away from me. I said to her, Sarabjit, I know you know what they've done to Sarabjit. I hope you will be brave enough to speak out. That's all I said to her. I knew that she knew. There was no way she didn't know. She just stared away from me. And for 5 years she remained in that silence, in that excruciating, agonising silence.
He said to me, he goes, I know you're in a difficult position because you lived in the same family, but when the time is right, make sure you speak up. And that's exactly what I did.
In December 1998, 27-year-old Surjit Athwal was murdered in India at the orders of her mother-in-law and husband. In 2004, her brother Jagdish had started to give up hope of ever getting justice for his sister.
Surjit's case was the first ever such case in British history, known history, of an outsourced honour killing. Nobody from the British government was making any kind of noises. This is a compelling question. Is Surjit not British? Is she not British enough? Is she, what is it? Because she's Punjabi British? She's brown British? She's non-white British? This raised, for me, very powerfully, questions of racism, of race discrimination.
After a long public campaign, in December 2004, the Metropolitan Police decided to review Surjit's case. It had been 6 years since Surjit was reported missing.
For a family with a missing person in it, you never really get closure. You're always wondering what happened, did it happen, how did it happen, who did it? Justice is so important when you know that somebody that you have loved has been murdered.
Chief Inspector Clive Driscoll headed up a cold case team which investigated historic cases like Surjit's, which were embarrassing for the Met.
I wasn't aware of the case. I hadn't seen any of the publicity that Mr Jagdish Dhillon had done, and so I know when I took the case on, it was very much on the background information was given to me by the Detective Inspector. I read the case, and then obviously I spoke to Mr Dhillon.
A fresh mind and a fresh attitude and fresh determination. He says to me, in a phone call I still remember and hold close to my heart, he said, Jagdish, I've read through all the documents, I've read through all the petitions, the letters to government, the letters to the Met Police, and I can clearly see all the jigsaws fitting together. Your sister was murdered. I'm convinced of it. And I will damn well get to the bottom of this, and we will damn well catch the killers and we will bring them to justice. That was so reassuring at a time when I was drained, tired, exhausted and demoralised. Here was a new hero in the picture who was ready to run with the case.
As the police reopened the case into Surjit's disappearance, in early 2005, they had a breakthrough. Bachchan's surviving daughter-in-law Sarabjit finally felt able to break her silence.
I got really, really ill. I didn't realise I had a stomach ulcer which was building up and growing inside me. My eldest daughter was at home with me. She was about 9, 10 at the time. She would come up to me and said, Mum, your eyes are rolling up, your lips are all white. It's really scary. My husband came home. I said to him, I need an ambulance. He ran straight downstairs and he picked up the phone and he called his mum.
Her husband calls his mother before calling an ambulance. That demonstrates that the choices he made came directly from her. You have to ask yourself, what if Bachchan hadn't told him to call an ambulance? Would he just have left her there dying? That's how ultimate her power was over him and the whole family.
So I was in hospital, lying on the bed, not knowing whether I was going to make it or not. Bachchan came to see me. He said to me, you can't speak to anybody about this. because we get in trouble, you're going to get in trouble with us as well. My dad came to see me. He said, you have to tell us what's happening. So I told my dad that Sergio's been murdered.
When she was discharged from hospital, Sarbjeet returned to the Athwal home to take care of her children, but her parents gave her the confidence she needed to speak to the police.
She was obviously terrified. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think to get anyone's trust, you just have to be human. I've always felt that if you're open with everybody and explain that this is me, this is where I am, but I will give you my word that I will try my hardest to protect you.
The Athwals stepped up their campaign to stop the police investigation.
Mr. Sukhdev Athwal took it upon him to phone me and tell me that he didn't want me to open the case. I like to think I was forceful but polite.
In 2006, Clive's team finally felt ready to arrest Batchan and Sukhdev, but news of their progress was leaked to the press.
Batchan came over after the papers had gone out. That was a really, really scary moment for me. That night she wanted to stay and she wanted me to sleep in the same bed. I did not sleep at all. I was really, really scared, thinking that if I fall asleep, God knows what they're going to do with me. Next day when she came downstairs, she seemed a bit more pleasant. She was smiling and said that, you've been married for a while now, you haven't met my family in India, and we're going to take a trip to India. And that just brought shivers down my spine, thinking, I know exactly what that means. You know, and that's when I knew that I had to get out of the house. I knew.
The plan to go to India never came to fruition. On the 3rd of November 2005, Batchan and Sukhdev Athwal were arrested at home. So was Sarbjeet.
Mrs. Athwal must be the only person I know that actually enjoyed being arrested, in as much as she realised that was the moment that she was free and safe.
It would be over a year before Batchan and Sukhdev stood trial, and Sarbjeet faced relentless pressure from her own children to withdraw her statement.
I left the house when my youngest was 12 weeks old, and we left the other 3 because they were still in schools. I mean, that was my biggest mistake, leaving them at home. My husband used that time to influence them, brainwash them against me, saying that I was getting mad, I was making all these things up. Just saying all sorts, saying that you're a bad mum. They were just breaking the family up. Dad wants us to stay together like before, and you're not accepting that. Dad wants to move in with us like before. Why can't we have that? You're just thinking about yourself, you're not thinking about us.
Sarbjeet's children turn against her, and this is something that we would expect. Their minds have been poisoned. They've been told that she's reason for the family breaking down.
So there's a lot of pressure from not only the family, the community as well. Religious, highly respected people would come up to me and said that you should be ashamed of what you've done and you shouldn't have done what you did, because in their eyes you did right.
What I find personally terrifying is that this woman who murdered her own family member is still considered a respected member of that community. There is something wholly twisted about being able to carry out such crimes and still have standing.
In 2007, Sarbjeet faced her in-laws in court.
So I remember the first day I went into court, I did the first couple of hours in the morning, and then I came back and I said my knees are collapsing, and I said I can't. I'm literally dragging myself into the dock, in the witness box.
She was under a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, and quite naturally and understandably so. She had been told repeatedly after Sarbjeet's murder that we can also do the same to you that we did to Sarbjeet. So that was frightening enough in itself.
It's hard to explain to someone how many of her rights, freedom, not really freedom, how much of her rights had been taken away, how much she was told what to do. So not only did she stand up to the tyranny of a murder, she actually stood up to years of brainwashing. I'm not a medical person, and people might scream and say, what do you know about brainwashing? I know when someone's been beaten into submission, because I dealt with that all the time.
Batchan Athwal and Sukhdev Athwal were found guilty of arranging the murder of Surjit and sentenced to life in prison.
There was something that Sukhdev said which summed it up. He said, this is all Surjit's fault. There is no remorse. They actually think they had the right to do what they did to Surjit.
Sarbjeet set up a charity, True Honour, in Surjit's memory, and works with Clive to train police officers on how to support vulnerable witnesses.
Our mother-in-law always taught us that be the good wife to the good daughter-in-law. Because she was quite religious, she was baptised, she would go to the temple every single day. My sister-in-law, Surjit, realised all she was looking for, to be happy and have her own life.
Jagdish is a committed campaigner against honour-based violence.
Those words of guilty emerged from the mouth of the jury. That was such a powerful, heaven-like sound. I was so overwhelmed. I didn't shout, I didn't get up. I just absorbed it inside me in such a profound way. Such sweet, powerful, sublime words, guilty, because they could have got away.